everyone. Mandy Friedman here, licensed professional clinical counselor, clinically certified domestic violence counselor, clinically certified trauma professional level 2, the owner of Claremont Mental Health, and what else do I? Oh yeah, the creator of SNAP, Survivors of Narcissistic and Abusive Personalities. I'm here back with Michelle Minette. We already did a video together a little while ago about co-parenting do's and don'ts, which we actually discovered is more parallel parenting. So you want to go back and definitely watch that video with Michelle, and you'll learn more about her there as well. But Michelle, will you introduce yourself, and then I'll introduce our topic for today. Tell us about yourself, Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle Minette. I'm a certified holistic life coach with a practice in Hamilton, Ohio, where I focus on helping people heal from narcissistic abuse. I don't know, I've been in the business for helping people for 17 years with specialties in working with children, parenting, trauma, and assessing people in and out of the prison system, and some forensic work there too. Which landed me here.
Which landed you here.
Right.
I think working in prisons was probably a really great experience when it comes to how we got here also, right?
Yeah, it was fascinating, right? And actually, I had people ask me about it all the time. Most of the people that I worked with, right, you could kind of see their trajectory and be like, man, that could have happened to anybody, But of course, I did have to take some time and delve into what the difference is between diagnosing narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial personality disorder as a result of that experience. So,
excellent. Well, that's why I need your help today.
Okay.
All right. So this thing has been happening to me recently. Well, not really recently. I'd say it's probably been over the past year, maybe 18 months. On my social media, I get messages calling me an Able-ist. And they say things like, you're villainizing and demonizing a group of people that are mentally ill, and that is Able-ist. And they say that, people that are diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, like that they're under some protected class as if they're disabled, and that by talking about narcissistic abuse, that is somehow calling attention to their illness, and that's, not right. It's not morally right to, highlight a whole group of people and then, you hear I'm going, to zero in on an entire population of people and decide you don't like them just because of some of the characteristics that they have that you don't understand. And never mind. Anyway, so what I'm trying to say is that, people think that narcissistic abuse means that there's someone with narcissistic personality disorder that is behaving badly in people's lives, and that, by calling attention to it, that we are basically, okay, the other, I had two messages. One said, "Fuck you, Able-ist, kill yourself." So that was one of my top 3 most favorite ones. But another one was interesting, and they said, there's not, depression abuse. There's not borderline personality abuse. There's not, anxiety disorder abuse. So, how is there narcissistic abuse? That's just not right. Now, you have worked with assessing for these exact things. So I would say that not only in your work today do you understand a lot about it, but you also understand a lot about it back to those basic foundational pieces of assessment, right? Because the assessments is where it all begins, isn't it? Right. And so my question to you is the concept of narcissistic abuse ableist? And my other question is, are narcissists mentally ill? I need you to help me.
Yeah, that's a great question. But I have to say, at the very beginning, when you're talking through it, I was thinking of the people attacking you, right? Like, tell me you're a narcissist without saying you're a narcissist. Right. And it's an interesting point of view, that calling that ableist. So the question is it a mental disorder? Right. So, well, according to the DSM, the latest versions of the DSM, it is a diagnosable personality disorder, right? And so, yeah, in that respect, we could call it a mental illness, right? Because it's diagnosable. Now, one of the things, there is a popular, I think, psychologist that specializes in narcissism and narcissist abuse, that actually, from what I understand, has said that narcissistic personality disorder actually should not be diagnosable or considered a mental illness, because one of the main components of diagnosing a mental illness is that the person should suffer. And somebody who has narcissistic personality disorder does not experience suffering. Right?
Yeah. That's one perspective, I guess.
It's one perspective. But I don't know, does the person have to be aware that they're suffering in order to suffer?
Right.
I mean, because if you understand what it is, this person lacks a core identity, right? Who they are becomes a moving target based on who they're around and what they want the other people around them to think that they are. They lack true human connection. One of the things that I tell my clients when I'm working with them, when they feel like it's unfair, right? Because that is part of the problem, right? Like, it's so unfair. They get to go on. They get to have another relationship. It didn't affect their job. It didn't ruin them financially, or they just don't care if it affects them in any way. But here I am in therapy, having to rediscover myself, overcome all of this PTSD that happened, the harm. And what I end up saying is, would you trade places with them? Would you want to live the life that they're living? Right? Because we have an awareness, those of us without a personality disorder, at least without narcissistic personality disorder, we have an awareness of the things we would be missing out on that would equate to suffering for us if we were missing out on them. The beauty, because it's impressive from the outside to observe, the beauty of narcissistic personality disorder is that it cocoons the person into not even being aware of what they're missing out on or the ways that they're suffering. And also not being aware of the true level of devastation that they're bringing to other people's lives in the process.
Their level of suffering is boundaries.
Yeah.
Like that's like, you can't have boundaries with me. Like that would be like, if I have to follow a boundary, or if I have to do what I'm told, or if I have to follow, say, a parenting plan, that's what suffering is for someone who's narcissistic. But also, it depend on the concept of narcissistic abuse, right? Like, what is our definition of narcissistic abuse? Because when we're saying narcissistic, that's a descriptive term. And it's also a trait or an element that exists in varying degrees in all kinds of different personalities. So if we're defining narcissistic abuse as at the hands of someone with narcissistic personality disorder, guess what? They're not going to be that many, because how many people with narcissistic personalities are going and getting diagnosed, first of all?
It's fair.
Doesn't happen unless maybe they're in prison. Or someone forced them, or they're a more self-aware version of a narcissistic person. But narcissistic is a descriptive term. It's not about the narcissist. And isn't that fucking hilarious that they're making it all about them? But it isn't all about them, is it? It's also about the drunken mom who, has too many wine coolers in her minivan on the way to the soccer game with a bunch of kids in her car, and somebody who is putting down people that are in a vulnerable population. It's people that are manipulating others, people that are obfuscating the truth, that they don't care about being parasitic. You know, they don't care about how what they're doing is hurting someone else. Now, how they got to that point of not caring, we can get there 100 different ways, whether it's a narcissistic personality or a psychopathic personality, or someone who's active in their substance use disorder, someone with low emotional intelligence. There's so many reasons how someone could come to the point of being manipulative and being narcissistic in that moment. So we have states and traits. Does that fall within your framework or your framework of how you view this topic?
Absolutely, right. And I think part of the discovering that you have been, exposed to or damaged by narcissistic abuse, right? Part of the very beginning is doing all the research, delving into the research and defining it and seeking this validation. So much so that people get really caught up. I mean, I don't know where you are on this, but how the hell are there 9 to 10 different types of narcissistic, right? Narcissist personality disorder out there? I mean, that we're getting a little far-fetched there. I don't know that somebody actually did the statistical work that you have to do to separate out constructs to come up with specific categories of behavior within the diagnosis. It's too far-fetched. But that's the result, right? Like, oh, do I have a malignant, or is this person APD, or are they this? And what it comes down to in the end, it doesn't matter. It does not matter. We're looking at the behaviors that are happening now, right? It doesn't matter where it came from. And oftentimes, sometimes it helps people to understand in order to heal. And get that. Take some time and room. I'm definitely one of those people. I want to delve into it. But at some point, it gets in the way of your healing. So you don't have to be able to define exactly what the narcissist is. And sometimes understanding too much about how they got there gets in the way of the healing, because we confuse understanding with accessibility. We can understand why somebody or how somebody got to the point where they were this toxic, that you're abused. But that doesn't mean that you suddenly deserve the abuse all of a sudden, because you understand where it came from. We're allowed to have compassion and set a boundary. So
are you saying then that people, let's say someone has been diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder. Let's just say that they have.
All right.
Are they disabled?
That's a very good question. But I think though, what the comments are, the criticism, what they're asking is more, are they disabled in a way that requires our compassion and attention? And I'd rather approach that question, right? Are they disabled? I mean, as functional human beings with genuine connection to other human beings, absolutely, they're disabled. But their disability causes pain and problems and damage, long-lasting damage to other people, right? And so finding compassion for that is very hard. And it becomes even more difficult when you realize that it's, for all intents and purposes, uncurable. And I don't think people know this, but they're really not supposed to be in treatment, right? Unless, never group therapy.
I was just going to say, especially not systemic.
Yes. And individual treatment only with somebody who is extensively trained and educated in working with them so they can set the appropriate boundaries. Because otherwise, their disorder gets worse or better, depending on how you're looking at it, right? But they get better at the abuse and the damage that they bring to others. So is it ableist to recognize the resulting trauma in the victim of somebody that has a personality disorder that shields them from experiencing suffering, and who through treatment only improves their ability to abuse others? Is that what we're asking?
Yes. Yeah, right. Okay, so and then here's the other thing. They like to educate me like that I don't know.
Mm.
But they were abused. Michelle, they were abused. They didn't choose this.
So brings me to good boundaries, right? So this is like the extreme version of, have you seen those memes that's going around social media where they're saying, I'm fragile, so, and I've been hurt in the past. So if you get in a relationship with me, you're going to have to be patient and do X, Y, Z, all this extra shit, right? And I always want to respond and be like, no, to do your own work, right? You come to the party without baggage because I took care of mine, right? Nobody should have to tiptoe around the issues you didn't resolve. And so this fits in that category. Yes, they've been abused, but just like everybody else, they're responsible for doing their own work so that they can act in a pro-social way, so that people will like them, want to be around them, and have genuine connections with them. So yeah, they've been abused, but it's not my responsibility to ignore the damage they cause others because they've been abused.
You know, I take care of an adult with disabilities, lives in my home, and I care for 20, you know, when he's here, he requires a lot of care. He's not with me all the time, but when he is with me, I'm taking care of him, and he is disabled.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I got a problem with using that word maybe more than other people because it's something that does affect my life.
Right.
So when I'm told, fuck you, Able-ist, kill yourself, which I honestly am not hurt by that. I think that doesn't bother me. I'm not
Right.
shocked by that. I mean, I work with survivors of abuse. You know, like I've heard all the horrible, mean things that people can say. That's not the worst thing I've heard. But at the same time, it's like, this is narcissistic abuse. You are currently right now in the moment, as you're telling me to kill myself and fuck you, Able-ist, you are pirating survivor narratives. You are also what's the word? They are using the vulnerable population of people who are disabled to somehow, as a mantle of their own victimhood. You know, fuck you for that too. You don't get to do that.
No.
And like that they're educating the expert part, which is always hilarious to me as well. The whole, like, there's not borderline abuse, you know, like, did you think I just pulled this out of my ass just because I feel like it, because I just want to rail on certain people? Like, no, that's what you're doing to me right now. You're using all the skills that narcissistic people use to twist something into something that it isn't, to avoid responsibility for your behaviors.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's pure blame shifting, right? We're going to shift this. Yeah, we're going to shift this into not being about me. Wait a minute. We can't assume, right, that the person sending you the comment was a narcissist. But yes, we can.
You're right. We can't.
Yeah. I mean, and what's fascinating about that is, damn you, you aren't being compassionate enough to people who need compassion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Or,
I mean,
okay, how about this? If they're not themselves narcissistic, they are abuse apologists. I mean, where is this coming from? That it's like, do you not believe survivors? Do you not believe the stories that people tell? Or you don't believe the experts? Are you, oh, I know. Well, here's another problem, is that in our society, in our culture, because you live here, that means you get a say on topics that you don't know anything about.
well,
and that by you just saying what my belief, your belief, you can believe it all you want. That doesn't make it factually true.
Yeah.
Believe away, sir. You know,
don't get me started
with your beliefs. sorry not to step on your beliefs. And so we have that word that's being used and twisted in a way and used by populations that are targeting other vulnerable populations, right?
Yeah.
My belief.
Right. And I really think if we want to give some credence to the idea, right, that people who have narcissistic personality disorder suffer in some way, are the survivors of their own forms of abuse, whether it's active abuse or neglect, then my response is it's not pie, right? Both can be true at the same time, right? And both are true at the same time. Narcissists aren't, what do they say? They're not born, they're created, right? So they do come out of forms of abuse, right?
Or it's too much or not enough. It can be too much or not enough, right?
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like neglect under like permissive parenting,
Gotcha.
right?
Gotcha.
So that's neglect for the developmental process that needs to happen with structure.
Okay.
Sorry, I should share that stuff instead of keeping it in my head. But but yeah, so they both exist, right? They were created from abusive or neglectful or permissive situations, right? And also they have victims who are arguably suffering the worst form of emotional abuse ever. Whether they're their children, coworkers, friends, or romantic partners.
When you said ever, I started thinking for just a second. You're right. You're right. If you're a POW, you're a POW. If you're being grilled and questioned and interrogated, you're being grilled and questioned and interrogated, right? Like you're in a setting where those things happen.
Yes.
You're not at grandma's dinner table at Thanksgiving with your family around you.
Right.
Right. That's what makes it horrific, is that it's not coming from the place where it's supposed to come from. You're not supposed to get treated this way by the people that love you and that are supposed to take care of you and protect you. Right. We know we're supposed to be treated this way by police, lawyers, bullies, military, depending on your situation. Right. Like there's some places where it's like, yeah, I bet that's going on there. And I bet if I go in there, I'm going to maybe experience some of this stuff. Right. Others, it's church with good people, and that's what makes it, to me, so horrible. So I don't know if you've seen one of my videos, is I have the top 3 most damaging personalities. That gets a lot of clicks when you do that kind of thing. Right. Well, my top 3 are the narcissistic mom, origin story, right? The savvy psychopath, because they're the ones that are coming and going. You don't even know that they've been there. And now you're completely dry and not sure where all your resources went. But, the savvy psychopath is the one that is climbing the corporate ladder and is not in prison. Right. But then we have the nice guy narcissist. And the reason I bring them up is because, narcissistic mom, yeah, she's going to probably be acting that way, at least to the kids. And, she may not necessarily be the nicest person on the outside, although some of them do present that way. Like, your mom is so nice. And you're like, right? But the nice guy narcissist is somebody that has a twinkle in his eye. He's got a nice smile. He's super nice. And people want to spend time with him. You want to have a beer with him. He coaches soccer. The women all think, oh, if he was single, it's that kind of a person that's like, they're really a nice person to the point you meet him, you're like, he's a nice guy. What a nice guy. And they are not nice guys at all. Right. They're actually sadistic, jealous cowards who present a certain way because that's how they get away with things, is by acting a certain way. But behind the scenes, they are cruel. All that niceness is gone. They look different. They sound different. Then they come out of the house and they turn into their nice guy self. And so to me, that aspect of it is what makes it so much worse in terms of forms of abuse is because of that malevolent creativity that we've talked about, that people don't believe it when it's right in front of their own face, that when you use terms like narcissistic abuse, everybody shits their pants and gets all wound up about it. It's dangerous because no one wants to talk about it. It happens behind closed doors, but when it happens on the world stage, guess what happens? Nothing.
Nobody believes it.
Nobody believes it. And it's happening in front of the entire planet. And we're all acting like it's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
But yet it is. So that's what makes it so dangerous. At least when you're being tortured by your captor, you know that that's what's going on. But if it's the minister of your church or the coach of your kid's soccer team, they're not supposed to be the person that is acting that way. And so they get away with it. I mean, 99% of the time, there's no consequences for them at all. And like you said at the beginning of this, of our interview here, is that they get away with it. And we are the ones that are cleaning up the mess and taking responsibility for the damage that they cause. So if that's a mental illness, it would only be mentally ill in terms of one book, because it falls under a category in the book.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Diagnostic and Statistics Manual that they get together and update every few years.
Yeah. That is also neglectfully behind the times on a lot of subjects.
It is. But I'll also, like, from another perspective, though, I mean, it's a disordered way of moving through life.
Okay.
Which puts it in that Diagnostic and Statistics Manual, right? So we can agree that this is not a healthy way to live life. So that's where, so that's where it goes and that's where it belongs. But just because it's in there doesn't mean every single one is worthy of sympathy and compassion and a protected status, right? I mean, maybe sympathy and compassion to a point. Right? Like, I have sympathy for the child that grew up in that home, that had to develop these personality traits in order to protect themselves from the emotional abuse they were undergoing. But that doesn't mean that I don't need to hold them accountable for the damage that they cause others, or that we shouldn't be. And I think that other thing got into gaslighting, which I love and I'm looking forward to breaking down, right? I mean, the main reason that narcissistic abuse is so unique and is the worst, I would argue, arguably the worst form of emotional abuse, is because of the gaslighting. And I believe that we have future plans to dissect that term, because people are using it way too casually and way too freely without understanding the depth of the trauma. Gaslighting is probably the cornerstone of C-PTSD as a result of this.
This is why I'm talking to you, because you speak my language. Yes. That's what we're doing next. Okay, right. Awesome. Michelle, thank you so much for talking to me about this. These are the thoughts that are like rolling around in my head a lot of the time. And it just feels so good to talk to someone that it's not just anyone. And so I'm just talking to anyone. I'm talking to somebody that has 17 years of experience working in mental health, and including in this setting where we would study these exact personalities. So you're someone who knows who you're talking about, and you know it in a personal way, and you know it in a professional way. So thank you. This helps me a lot. I'm feeling a lot better after our conversation. I'll send me the bill.
It too. It's nice to talk to another professional, who's specializing in this and actively working to help people heal from it. That greater level of understanding is just so special, right?
All right.
Yeah. I just want to point out, it's not just our beliefs.
My beliefs. I got some beliefs. All right. Stay tuned. Next time with Michelle Minette, gaslighting. Can't wait. I'll see you next time. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you, Mandy. Bye.